One percenters, welcome back. Coach Tommy, how to be a shooting threat when you can't shoot. How to be a shooting threat when you can't shoot. Thinking basketball reaction. First thoughts, you can't be a shooting threat if you can't shoot. You can be a scoring threat. You can run through passes, run through the ball. You can be a dunking option. You can instantly run at someone and create a mismatch or suck in defense. But can you be a shooting threat without being able to shoot? I'm not sure. I can be wrong. Let's see.
Space. He's got Allen in the corner.
It's running through the pass right there. That's running through the pass. And you see how much suction the drive is. You run through a pass. So when they think you're out there closing out, you just run through the pass and go right to the rack. Also helps when you're a Greek freak. Big, long, strong, aggressive, and athletic.
That is a heck of a play, but not because it was a big dunk. This is a non-shooter spotting up behind the three-point line and turning himself into a massive threat, and that's become one of the most important trends in the NBA today. Shooter spotting up behind the three-point line and turning himself...
Or is this bad defense? If he's really 30%, should you close out that hard, or is it just so instinctual that you rotate to close out like that? Or can you just let him catch the ball and dare him to shoot it?
Into a massive threat, and that's become one of the most important trends in the NBA today.
I've been saying this about Matt Barnes,
the three-point revolution
Dwayne Wade,
in basketball
Zion
has placed
Williamson.
a premium on outside shooting. The best guards can warp the court in ways that we've never seen, and big men who shoot threes add an extra spacing dimension that was rare to find in previous eras. Because defenses have to worry about all that three-point shooting,
Draymond Green.
they've been stretched out in ways we've never seen before, opening up the lane for teammates.
Andre
As a result
Iguodala
of
does
that,
it pretty good.
Non-shooters
Russell Westbrook
invite
does it
defenses
sometimes.
to leave them alone and defend the basket against dangerous ball handlers. A few weeks ago on the More Thinking Basketball channel, we looked at how teams are defending Zion Williamson by ignoring his teammates who don't shoot well so they can help in the paint against his drives, which means that spot-up shooter...
Perfect example, right? The Bucks more honed in on defense. They don't close out hard. The first clip of Pelicans closing out to Giannis, they close out way too hard. Giannis runs through the pass, gets an easy dunk.
Who can't really shoot have become kind of an offensive liability.
Defense is about risk management. Defense is about risk management, discipline.
Where standing in place actually makes it easier to ignore them and help a more dangerous teammate. But what
Only
if they
works
don't stand in
until you
place?
can't shoot.
Instead of standing 25 feet
There's
away
Draymond.
and taking an inefficient shot, poor shooters can cut toward the hoop into all that open space.
It's not
Draymond
shooting
Green
threat.
has made just 29% of his wide
just
open
called
threes in
spacing.
the last 3 years. So instead of helping the defense by standing still and throwing it off the rim a bunch, Green can basket cut his way into a higher percentage
45
look.
cut.
The idea of cutting towards space is as old as basketball
That
itself,
45 cut
and
is
players have
available.
been slicing into openings like this forever. Here's a play from the 2000 Western Finals where Shaq is doubled and Robert Horry cuts right behind the double team instead of spotting up from three. As
Robert
three-point
Horry can
spacing
shoot.
became more prevalent, we'd see defenders zone up multiple shooters, so offensive players would back cut them when they weren't looking. Sometimes even two players would cut at the same time, forcing the weak side defender to pick one over the other. Good shooters use this tactic too. After Kawhi Leonard is trapped, Norm Powell is wide open in the corner, and he ends up with a clean look that rims out. So on the very next possession, the Clippers are in an identical alignment. The Sixers trap Kawhi again, and this time Powell cuts into that open space and ends up with a much easier three-point play. So this certainly isn't
This
a
is
novel
good basketball.
concept, but
Talking
it's
about this for a
increasing
while.
in popularity
How to
as
score.
defenses have figured out how to defend a more spaced out floor. A few years back, when James Harden and the Rockets started
You won't be able to do this once all 5 players on the court can actually shoot.
spamming pick and roll, the offense didn't need to move as much because they had defenses at their mercy. But whenever there's a weak shooter out there, the rules change a little.
Yep.
The Celtics helped way off Bruce Brown in last year's playoffs as part of their scheme to shut down Kevin Durant.
Bruce Brown can shoot
And
better this year.
when Boston wanted to throw a bunch of bodies at KD, Brooklyn made it easy for them to help and recover by remaining largely stationary. Here's a common way to aggressively defend pick and roll, with an extra defender sliding over into the driving gap, then recovering to the shooter, and I'd call that a semi-open shot.
That's open.
Compare that to this play, where Evan Mobley helps toward the ball, and the shooter cuts instead, and Mobley thinks he's
That 45 cut is very useful.
still at the three-point line. This defensive tactic of sliding over to help and then recovering to the wing is hardwired into today's game. And defenders are often just jabbing at the ball as a deterrent with the intent to quickly recover out to that shooter. So when the wing shooter cuts at a 45-degree angle to the hoop,
It helps a lot when you 45 cut. You leave a lot of space for Trae Young, a lot of gaps for him to keep coming left.
defenses aren't ready for it. This 45 cut has grown in
Oh, there you go.
popularity over the years as a way to counter defenses loading up on the ball. But it's also a way for weaker shooters to make themselves a threat behind the line. Here's a 32% wide open shooter, and his cut punishes the help and turns it into a layup. We talked about the Kings' best practices earlier this year, and 45 cuts are part of their movement-heavy system. So their good shooters can also use it as a counter. Mikal Bridges wants to stab at the ball handler, but he's really thinking about Kevin Huerter's shooting, so when he turns his head,
The key is to cut when they're not looking or when the head is turned. So you have to drift slowly. You have to walk behind the defender's eyes, and when they're focused on the ball handlers, then you can cut behind them. That's kind of what you should be learning anyways. When your defender can't see you, move to another spot. Move to the open spot. Make passes easier for your teammates. The game will come so much easier to you.
Huerter takes off, and the timing is perfect because Bridges has no idea he left, and we get some smooth red velvet at the end of the play.
And not only that,
Huerter takes off,
right? So then all the help comes, and then Sabonis has to come to help Huerter because Huerter is not
the
really
timing is perfect
good at
because
this
Bridges has no
finishing.
idea he left, and we get some smooth
Might get
red
smacked
velvet
by
at
DA.
the end of the play. These cuts can give an average three-point shooter gravity in a spot-up situation.
I don't know, man. Some of these made-up words like gravity, shooting, like
Terrence Davis's defender is pulled right out of the driving lane by his 45 cut, and that lets Malik Monk get all the way to the rim. This one is a cousin of the 45 cut, where a corner defender stunts toward the ball.
he's already below his eye level, so there's no way he should stay there to get that close out. He should continue to drift all the way to the corner or go right to the rim.
So the cut comes along the baseline, and again, it's so powerful because the
Right?
defense.
And so if you're not going to take that corner three, that pass is way in the corner to make yourself available. You have to get into the gap between Embiid and whoever
Is
is guarding him.
To
So
recover
that's
to
where
the
the
line,
open space is.
no,
And then
toward the
get an
paint.
easy lay.
Here's a 45 cut with the action on the other side of the floor.
See right here, who's not looking? 44, right? His man's not looking at him, so he can cut. 23 on the Pistons is also wide open, so he should be moving,
And this
right? But you have to understand, you have to move in a smart space, and the ball handler has to be able to find you or find the next person to make the pass to you.
changes the passing angle for the
So here, when he gets into this gap, he didn't cut early. If he cut early, then it wouldn't be there. If he cut early, number 4 and number 22 would drag into him, and then he would still have to pass this, but I think that's 44 Bogdanovich would have to drift and fill in where 23 or Bay is cutting.
penetrator and creates a layup for a subpar spot-up shooter. So
This is just basketball. If you're so young, you don't get this. If all you did was AAU 101 up and down the court, you don't understand these concepts. So hopefully maybe you learn them here or learn from a good coach somewhere else.
conceptually, what are we seeing here? First, the age-old idea of cutting into space, specifically when defenders
Cutting into space isn't really... It's missing some points.
turn and go to help, can weaponize spot-up shooters who aren't even good from behind the arc. And second, into space, specifically
cutting into space is part one, but the timing is part two, and then the passer has to pass it to you, part three.
Defenders turn and go to help.
That's Jimmy Butler. He's driving around the corner. He's running out of space. He's jumping out of bounds. Okay, you normally wouldn't tell guys to jump out of bounds, but he's jumping out of bounds to buy more time to read the defense. How are they going to react? Where is Derek White going to go? He's obviously looking at the guy in the corner. So he's hoping number, 18 on the Heat keeps coming to the rack.
Who
or 16.
Aren't even good.
And so he comes to the rack when everybody's focused into the corner.
Good from behind the arc. And second, timing those cuts just right against a defender who thinks he's recovered.
Maybe I'm just one step ahead of Thingy Basketball Guy because he's saying all the stuff I'm just saying.
Bring to a stationary shooter can use his momentum against him for high percentage offense. Which brings us back to that Giannis dunk. The brilliance of that play is that Herb Jones doesn't have to worry about Giannis' shooting, is early on his key pick and roll help, and thinks he's recovering to a poor shooter, but Adetokounmpo flies right by him, and on the very next possession, they run the exact same pick and roll, and despite shooting just 30% on wide open threes, Giannis Antetokounmpo freezes Herb Jones just by standing in the corner.
That's the wrong
shooting
decision
just
by Herb
30%
Jones.
On wide open threes. Giannis Antetokounmpo
he can be in there and he can jump and block the pass. He doesn't need to close out to the three.
Freezes Herb.
So those are the when I talk about risk management, you have to understand all of that.
Jones.
Right, so if he comes in for the help, he'll get Pat Connaughton to jump, and then he has to throw a high pass over him. And then you just play the passing lane. You don't play the shot.
Just by standing in the corner. These cuts are so devastating today because the floor is spaced out from all that shooting.
Man, that's good. God, that's because of the dribble drive by Jordan Poole.
Ideas. Corner. These cuts are so devastating.
The cuts would not be available if Jordan Poole didn't attract a triple team, a double team. He didn't pull in Cornette to come help him.
Floor is spaced out from all the.
It's not because of the shooting.
That shooting. These ideas wouldn't have the same effect.
This goes all the way back to the drive and kick days, touch the paint and kick out. Back
in the 80s when defenses weren't programmed to guard the three-point line and there was less space to cut into in the paint. Today, a big part of the game is how well perimeter players attack closeouts when the ball is swung to them and defenders recover to the three-point line. Here's that same pick and roll action we've seen with the wing defender, Anthony Edwards, pulled over to help, and instead of...
Okay, certain rules, guys in the strong side corner, they're not going to help, so then you're going to pull in number one, Anthony Edwards, and so that leaves Saric the ability to do something.
Cutting, Dario Saric attacks Edwards' closeout by instantly putting it on the floor.
See, and then you're not going to close out. They're trained not to leave these corner three shooters.
And drive.
Even if they're bad, because players are robots now. They don't really understand or think through the game too much.
Driving for a layup. Some players take it a step further, starting their drive as the pass is in the air to
running through the pass.
Give them a head start against the recovering defender. So, if you're a subpar shooter spaced way out on the wing, you can still punish this basic pick and roll help by taking off with the pass so you're running in the opposite direction of your man, and that is a nightmare to stop. I've heard this technique called stampeding, where the attacker starts running on the pass to leave the closing defender in the dust. And these stampedes exist somewhere between...
I've never heard it called stampede. I don't know. I just always called it run through the pass.
In the cuts we've discussed.
That's just from teaching.
And a traditional way to attack a closeout. It's basically the same concept that Giannis used to buckle Herb Jones, although he took about 3 full steps before he caught it. But just like a great back cut or 45 cut, it makes non-shooters dangerous against these rotations where they'd traditionally be liabilities as shooters.
They would be liabilities as shooters, but now once you give them the ball in that space, now they're liabilities as playmakers. So once they have the ball with a full head of steam, they either better be a good slasher and just dunk the ball, or then you have to trust them to cut and then make the right next play.
For a good 45 cut, it makes non-shooters dangerous against these rotations where they traditionally.
So normally, if he's not a good shooter and then he's not a good decision maker, he's just going to get into the lane and throw it away or turnover or travel or something like that. So primary ball handlers or playmakers are a little bit tentative sometimes to move the ball to these players that can't shoot and just make bad decisions.
Additionally be liabilities as shooters. For a good shooter, it unlocks another dimension. Imagine leaving the deadly Darius Garland to go help, and as you recover to his shot, he's on the third step of his drive and just leaves you in the dust.
I have a prediction for you for your net worth, your assets. 2023 is going to be.
So this technique asks the defender to move in 3 directions: toward the ball to help, back to the shooter to recover, and then toward the hoop, and that's hard to do. The Stampede is the latest weapon in the evolutionary arms race, where shooters can
This is not evolution, man. It's being
spot
smart.
up, cut into space, or wait to use a defender's momentum against them as the ball arrives to extend their advantage. While Giannis does spot up and start running early like this on occasion, Joel Embiid is a true.
I call these draft drives. You
drive
want to
extend
cut
their
into the
advantage.
draft. If you guys have watched, I don't know, NASCAR or IndyCar draft drive, the car behind the car is actually faster.
While Giannis does spot
So Pat Connaughton's creating a draft, and there's a big gap for someone to
Up
come
and start-
right behind him. So that's a draft
running
drive.
early like this on occasion, Joel
45
Embiid is a
cut
true
draft drive.
stampeder, mixing his spot-up attempts with thunderous forays into the paint like this. And this is just a nasty curveball to soften defenders who might think about closing out so hard the next time. And
Pick your poison. Do you going to give him a full head of steam? Are you going to close out, give him the 3? You got to give up something. It's defense. That's why this game. That's why I say offense wins. It's not defense.
Embiid also
If your offense ain't winning, you ain't good enough on offense.
has a really nice feel for when a defender is changing directions back out to him, and more bigs who can shoot are using this tactic as a change of pace, because it's hard for really big defenders to change directions so rapidly. At the team level, the Pelicans might be the unofficial stampeding kings, often having weaker shooters catch it on the run.
If they let you get away with these travels, it's going to
At
be
the
easier
team
too.
level, the Pelicans might be the unofficial stampeding
So when you
kings,
catch it here, right? He releases it.
often having weaker shooters
If you
catch
do
it
it so
on the
fast,
run.
they won't call it.
And Herb Jones in particular uses the technique all the time, launching himself out of a cannon to blow by recovering defenders. They
Be
all
brilliant to
and
draft
Herb
drive
Jones
behind
in particular
Zion.
uses the technique all the time, launching himself out of a cannon to blow by recovering defenders. They also have Zion Williamson, who deserves a capital S when he stampedes to the basket, but Zion is also the premier example of a non-shooter who can spot up, but then punish defenders if they shift their attention toward the ball.
LeBron, what you watching,
This
bro?
is also the premier example of a non-shooter who can spot up,
This is just called not playing robot basketball.
but then punish defenders if they shift their attention toward the ball. This is the same pick and roll help we've seen repeatedly in this video, just close
There we go. This is a draft drive. You go right behind once that guy
to the
drives.
hoop. So Zion circles
So there you get Alvarado and Larry Nance sucking them all in. So that's the draft. And
in
then you
from
fill
behind.
right in behind the gap. And then you got a little floater if you're in high school or middle school. Or if you're Zion, you can just spin and dunk or just dunk and do what you do.
and turns it into a layup drill. He sort of combines it all. He's deadly when he catches it on the run. He cuts into open space. And if you sag off to help, he'll start moving before he catches it, and suddenly he's right at the rim. We're already in a movement-heavy era, with a ton of complex three-man actions and dribble handoffs
The best way to develop your game is play 3-on-3.
that are inherently difficult to
Your team game, 3-on-3. Your individual game, 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 1-on-3. Your team game, you need to play 3-on-3, 3-on-4, like stuff like that, 4-on-4. 5-on-5 is not a great way to develop your game because usually one or two guys are just stuck in the corner.
defend. So these
Doing nothing.
stampedes and timely cuts are yet another offensive counter
Right here, okay, instead of him swinging around, somebody could have drove right off of him.
for defections and dribble handoffs that are inherently difficult to defend. So these stampedes and timely cuts are yet
Okay, so here, who could have came off of him? Jason Tatum could have came right off of him. Who else could have came in right into him? Right when he gets into this gap, Williams, number 12 in the corner, could have came right off of him. Jaylen Brown also could have came right behind Marcus Smart. But these guys, they're more shooters than slashers, so they're not gonna do it.
offensive counter
Jaylen Brown might be the best slasher on the team.
for defenses who were already struggling.
See, does he run through the pass there? No, this is a regular catch and go.
Stop teams
That's the backside cut, right? Al Horford's not a great off the move
who
passer,
were
right?
largely
That's an
stationary.
okay one.
And timely cuts are yet another offensive counter
If
for
Horford
defenses who
would have
were
kept,
already struggling to stop teams.
if Horford would have been able to take one or two more dribbles in between, right? Then Tatum could have went right underneath him.
Teams who were largely stationary. And
Good double
I
cut by
think
Tatum and
this
and
extra
Williams.
offensive dimension is one of the reasons why
There it is, right? Opposite side, 45.
this is the most efficient offensive season in NBA history. Visit our extra
I mean, how to be a shooting threat when you can't shoot? You're not a shooting threat because if people just let you catch the ball, you would not do anything with it. It happens all the time with a bunch of bums at the gym. If they can't shoot, why you close out? People actually back up and dare you to shoot. They say he's with us. They just turn around and they point your hand at you because they know you can't shoot. So there's no hard closeouts. So if you were smarter in your closeouts, you would limit this, I guess, tactic a little bit less. But if you're so programmed to close out super hard to shooters and stuff like that, it's tough. You have to understand your risk at all times. Until next video, this is a pretty good video. I just don't like the title, but it got me to click. Hopefully you guys click too. Until next video, take 14 minutes, 24 seconds, or 1% of your day to get better. Coach Tommy, I'm out of here.